Okay. Good morning. Welcome, welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is, even future, your future self, maybe even listening to this. Welcome, welcome. So today I'm going to continue on this theme of the poetry of practice, be introducing some poems. One I'll introduce during the guided meditation that I'll just drop in, and then I'll repeat it during the Dharmette, and we'll talk about it a little bit and provide some other poems that are on a similar theme, but all about, this idea of practice. And there's something about poetry that allows for this, we might say, this compactness of expression. Like there's a lot into just a few words or few lines. And there's this way that to have this compactness requires some directness or some simplicity. And then maybe in the same way that there are, we have with meditation, a non-distracted mind. So this kind of simplicity and this pointedness that we find with poetry might be in some ways similar to a meditation practice. And we might even imagine that the poet has a still mind in order to really hone in on some of the right words or the expressions, as well as the one who's reading the poem. They might be someone who, like, reading the poem requires like a dropping away of all the extraneous, spurious thoughts, and instead is kind of like brought to this directness of what's being pointed to. So in some ways, poetry and meditation are just a natural companions. So I'll say that as an introduction. And let's just begin the guided meditation now. So taking a moment to settle in. And feeling the sensations of sitting. I like to begin with this feeling connected and grounded to this location and this moment. So feeling the pressure against the body. Maybe the feet are touching the ground. Feeling the groundedness of the feet, whatever they're touching. Maybe the back of legs are touching the chair, the cushion. Feeling the connection. The buttocks sitting on the chair, the cushion, the bench, couch, bed, whatever it might be. Most of us spend a good portion of our days sitting upright in a chair or some other way. So a way that we can imbue this experience of feeling the pressure against the body with some awareness. Sitting feels like this. And maybe the back is resting against the back of the chair or couch, whatever it might be. Can we feel that connection also? And if the back isn't being supported, can you feel the sense of uprightness, this internal support, the spine holding up the body? And can we inhabit this body with aliveness, with presence? Alive to the body in the way it feels right now. You might notice there's some areas of tension, some tightness. Maybe the shoulders are up a little bit. Can we let the shoulder blades slide down the back? And maybe tuck the chin just a tiny bit. Such a small movement that maybe no one would notice that you did it, but maybe tuck the chin and then moving the chin back, straight back, opens up the back of the neck in a really small, subtle, but impactful way. Sometimes tension is held around the jaw or around the eyes. We're checking in with the sensations on the face. You don't have to make them be different, but it might be that bringing some awareness allows for some softening. So just being with this experience of, we might say, bodily life right now, opening to it, allowing it as best we can. And is it possible to set the sense of direction, the attitude that we're using or is present as one of kindness? Can there be some warmth, some softness? Just for this meditation period. Can there be some care, openness? And then allowing the attention to rest on the anchor. For most of us, the anchor will be the sensations of breathing. For some, it might be sounds or the body. But tuning into the experience of breathing. The body breathes. We don't have to make it breathe. We don't have to change the breathing. We're just noticing the sensations of breathing. What would it be like to give yourself over to the sensations of breathing? Feeling the complete inhale and the complete exhale. And the transitions between inhales and exhales. And when the mind wanders, as it's apt to do, within this attitude, this field of kindness and warmth, we just very gently, simply begin again with the sensations of breathing. So I'm going to drop in a poem. You don't need to do anything with this poem. Just allow it to land or touch you or not. It's okay, it's okay. Whatever arises. And the poem goes like this. When everyone else was meditating, I'd be outside, circling the hall. Finally, I went to confess. I'm hopeless, I said. The elder nun smiled. Just keep going, she said. Nothing stays in orbit forever. If this circling is all you have, why not make this circling your home? I did as she told me and went on circling the hall. If you find yourself partly in and partly out, if you find yourself drawn to this path and also drawing away, I can assure you, you're in good company. Just keep going. Sometimes the most direct path isn't a straight line. If you find yourself partly in and partly out, if you find yourself drawn to this path and also drawing away, I can assure you, you're in good company. Just keep going. Sometimes the most direct path isn't a straight line. Okay, so welcome. Welcome, everybody. So in the guided meditation, I dropped in a poem as we're continuing this series on the poetry of practice. And it's a poem that's written by Matty Weingast. His last name is Weingast, and it's from the book, The First Free Women. And Matty looked at the poems of the Therigatha, that is the first awakening poems, I should say the awakening poems of nuns that are preserved in this Buddhist tradition. And Matty was inspired by those poems and wrote his own poems that are based on those, but include some modern thinkings and some modern twists. And so they're not translations necessarily, but just use them as inspiration. And I think these poems are just wonderful because Matty is pointing to something that we recognize in practice, but maybe we haven't, articulated so well, or maybe even understood so well. So the poem that I dropped in during the meditation, maybe I'll say it's pointing to that we get to be exactly who we are with this practice. It's not asking us to be somebody different. It's not asking us to completely transform ourselves into something or somebody that we're not. And I love this. This is like so important. I feel like it's asking us to move towards authenticity and to cultivate the skillful, the wholesome, the helpful parts of ourselves, but not to pretend like there isn't other parts of ourselves. Instead, we just fold in everything into our practice. And this is the way forward. So sometimes this poem is pointing to that sometimes we feel stuck. Sometimes we feel like we just can't get anywhere. We think we should be different than how we are, but we can't stop being how we are. And therefore we kind of like feel stuck, like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this way, or I should be doing that and not be doing this, and just kind of find ourselves going around and around in circles, not really having this way forward. And this poem also points to how it can be helpful to practice with others, especially when we're feeling stuck. Others, whether it's a teacher or somebody else that's on the path, or maybe they're not even on the path, but they're a good listener and they're sensitive for them to recognize maybe what's going on with us, this stuckness that we feel. And maybe it takes somebody else to point out something that we haven't seen to help us get unstuck. I'll say a little bit more about this after the poem. But here's the poem again. When everyone else was meditating, I'd be outside circling the hall. Finally, I went to confess. I'm hopeless, I said. The elder nun smiled. Just keep going, she said. Nothing stays in orbit forever. If this circling is all you have, why not make this circling your home? I did as she told me and went on circling the hall. If you find yourself partly in and partly out, if you find yourself drawn to this path and also drawing away, I can assure you, you're in good company. Just keep going. Sometimes the most direct path isn't a straight line. So I like that the poet is using this word circling in this poem. And we can imagine it might be literal circling, like walking around and around the hall, never quite, coming into the meditation session. Or maybe there's this way we like sign up for retreats, but never quite go. Or might be a way in which we put on our calendar, I'm going to get up and early and listen to those talks, or I'm going to stay up late and attend those Dharma talks, whatever your time zone might be, or whatever the offering might be. There might be a way in which we feel like, okay, I'm going to do this, but yet we just find ourselves kind of circling around. This, of course, is not uncommon. That especially kind of this path is, it's not the usual way in which we do things. So it might take some circling around before we kind of maybe settle in. So that might be one way we might understand this word circling that the poet is using here. But maybe circling also means the sense of being stuck, like not getting anywhere. I'm just maybe moving a little bit, but it just feels like it's a circle. Like there's no sense of a forward direction, this center movement. And then something that we might think about or consider, that this feeling of stuckness, of not getting anywhere, of just circling, most likely is related to holding to views, holding on to beliefs, having these particular notions that we are maybe intentionally, or maybe at the top of mind, and maybe even unknowingly, these ideas that we're holding on to. Because views have a sense of embeddedness, a sense of inertia. They have this like resistance to change. That's partly what makes them views, is that they're there and we may not even recognize them, and they're not shifting. Maybe I'll say the only things in our experience ever that don't shift or change are views. Everything else is changing. Our experience is changing. Things we see, hear, taste, touch, they're changing. All of our experiences are changing. Only views, like notions we have, are things that don't change. So if we have this feeling of stuckness, there's a view that we're holding on to that we're not quite noticing. And so in this poem, practitioner, she has this view, I'm hopeless. She has this idea, right? I'm hopeless. And implicit in this idea is like, I can't do this. Everybody else can, but I can't do this. And we might recognize, well, okay, that's just the hindrance of doubt. This is a part of practice, doubt. We can say it feels like this. It feels like this hopelessness. It feels like wanting to give up. It feels like that I somehow am separate from everybody else. I can't do this, but everybody else can. There's something deficient or insufficient in me. And so what can we do when we feel doubt? There's a few things. One is, I would say, is to investigate. Is there a way, there's two things that we can notice. What does this doubt feel like? This sense of hopelessness. Maybe it feels like this heaviness in the shoulders, or this way in which there's a sense of, I don't know, giving up, this kind of deflation. That's one way we can investigate the actual experience. Another way we can investigate when we have this sense of doubt is to maybe see if there's a question that we can formulate. Is there something like we can hold, maybe like boil down to this doubt instead of I'm hopeless? Is there something like, why, or maybe the question could be something like, is everybody else having this difficulty? Is this part of the path, is to recognize how out of control our minds are? Is it the case that in the beginning practice is difficult, or some days are easier than others? I just offer these as suggestions. So that could be a second way to work with doubt. So this feeling stuck, this feeling of just circling and certainly not getting in anywhere, most likely related to holding on to views. One view can be that in this poem, the person has a sense of, I'm hopeless. So this view, which we might understand is doubt about one's capability. And when there's doubt, you can investigate. This is a perfect antidote for doubt. I'm not going to ask, oh, just believe. That's not what this practice is about. Practice is investigating. What does doubt feel like? And what specifically do you have doubt about? There's another view that's getting held onto in this poem that's supporting this stuckness. And that is the idea that things can't change. I'm hopeless. It will always be like this. It can never be different. Like implicit in this idea of I'm hopeless means there will be no change. Now, this idea that, well, this is permanent. And of course, there's a part of us that knows, oh, everything changes. It's not true that anybody is hopeless. That's absolutely not true. But it feels like that sometimes. But can we notice that this is a view that things are not going to change? That is what's being held on to. So when we feel stuck with practice, when we feel like, oh, we're just circling and circling, we can ask ourselves, is there a view here that's not being seen? And chances are it's a view that's just under the surface. And so it might be something that we could drop in during our meditation practice. What view is not being seen here? And we can just tune in to the experience that we're having. And that's just right into the practice, just what's actually happening right now. Maybe one last thing that I'll say about this poem, this idea of circling, is that there are seasons of practice. And a season may last 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 decade. It's different for everybody, but there might be seasons of practice in which there's a lot of learning and there's excitement and we're consuming all kinds of information, listening to lots of Dharma talks. This enthusiasm and wanting to understand. There might be a season of practice in which we just really want to sit and explore the mind, explore this experience. Maybe listen to a lot of guided meditations. There might be a season of practice in which we just want to sit without guided meditations. And there might be a season of practice in which we feel like community is more important than being alone with our sitting in meditation or reading Dharma books or listening to Dharma talks. So is there a way that we can respect that there are seasons of practice? A lot of a retreat practice, no retreat practice. It doesn't always look the same. So whenever we feel stuck, maybe there's a way to just notice that there's different ways in which practice shows up. So maybe I'll just read this poem for this one last time. When everyone else was meditating, I'd be outside circling the hall. Finally, I went to confess, I'm hopeless, I said. The elder nun smiled. Just keep going, she said. Nothing stays in orbit forever. If this circling is all you have, why not make this circling your home? I did as she told me and went on circling the hall. If you find yourself partly in and partly out, if you find yourself drawn to this path and also drawing away, I can assure you, you're in good company. Just keep going. Sometimes the most direct path isn't a straight line. Thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow for some more poems. Thank you for your practice.